going to be recording today's session. Just want to make everybody aware that we will be able to share it at the end. So if there's any kind of technical difficulties or if anything happens throughout the session and you get kicked out, we will be posting it somewhere and we'll make that available for you guys after the session at some point. We are just going to go through a quick introduction around the table. My name is Carson Sinclair. I am the program coordinator at Protein Industries Canada. My role today will be to moderate the Q&A session at the end of the program, as well as help a bit of technology support on the back end, i.e. any chats that come in I will be responding to and monitoring the Q&A portion of the presentation. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Diane to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Diane Harms, and I am the PICS program specialist based in Alberta. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Campbell. I'm PICS Director of Programs and Regulatory. I'm based in Winnipeg.
And I am Megan Gervais. I am PICS Intellectual Property Manager, and I'm based in Saskatoon.
So we've covered off the webinar overview, and we're going to go through a few different aspects. As Carson will outline in the next section, please put any questions in the Q&A chat box and we'll address them during the Q&A section. We just covered the intro, so the remainder of our time will be covering the topics highlighted on this slide. And so, as I mentioned, before I dig into the details, Carson's going to give you a bit of an overview of the webinar tool, and just letting you know this is the first time that we've done a webinar using this platform, so we really appreciate your patience as we learn together.
Perfect. So just to go over a couple of the webinar functions for all the participants today, you will see at the bottom of the screen there is a toolbar. If you're on a mobile or tablet, I believe it may be at the top of your screen. On the left-hand corner there is the audio settings. You can use that to help with any issues you may be having audio-wise. The next function is the chat function. As we've said, we will be mainly using this. If you need some technical help or have any issues, you can contact me via chat. There is the Q&A function. It is important to note with the Q&A function, you are able to submit questions anonymously. These will come up in the Q&A, and we will be able to read them and answer them live at the end of the session. We will be, there is the upvoting function, which looks like a thumbs up. That is a way for us to help curate the list of prioritized questions. This will push any questions that you vote or use the thumbs up button for the upvoting. It'll put that question to the top of the Q&A so that we know that everybody is on the same page and would really like that question to be answered. And lastly, there is the polling function, which I would like to launch right now. It's just we're asking everybody to take a quick second to please identify which type of organization you're representing today. This can help us get a better idea of the type of people we have on the call, and perhaps help us use examples and speak to questions in a better manner. So while questions come in, I can let Diane take over and move on with the slides. I'll share the polling results for everybody once we get majority of the answers in. So thank you.
Thanks, Carson. So I have control again. So I'm not sure if the participant poll stays on top of the screen for you, but if you are done answering it, you can just press the X button to close that out. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to be with us this morning. And to begin, we'd like to give you a little bit of an overview of what and who Protein Industry Canada is. So we are one of 5 Canadian innovation superclusters with a geographical focus on Western Canada and a specific focus on the agri-food sector, specifically plant protein value chain. PIC plans to co-invest $300 million in the sector in partnership with industry. And as a nonprofit organization, we represent over 190 members. PIC aspires to be a catalyst that drives collaboration amongst trailblazers to realize Canada's agri-food potential. And as a supercluster, our goal is to encourage multi-company collaborations that span the value chain. And that's because we think that by doing things differently, we can drive more innovation. So our mission is that Canada is the world leader in plant protein. And our mission is to invest collaboratively to accelerate innovation and the competitiveness of the plant protein sector. To do this, we have several objectives. We want to increase the value-added production of plant protein-based products and co-products, and we expect to do this by developing new technologies and processes, growing processing closer to production, and removing industry-wide barriers and challenges, and increasing the capacity across the value chain. Our 2035 goal is to see $10 billion in annual incremental value. Oh, here I'll stop so that we can see the poll results. That's excellent. Thank you, Carson. So we're going to try to add an additional $10 billion in annual incremental value to Canadian produced crops. We hope to move Canada 5th in global agri-food exports, where we're currently standing at 8th position, and to establish Canada as an internationally recognized plant protein cluster, as a magnet for talent and investment. PIC's investments are spread into 2 priorities: technology and capacity building. Today, we are focusing on our technology priorities in relationships to our current call for proposals. To give you some context to the kinds of projects that we see, we'll review our current investment pillars and technology project pipeline. So PIC has 4 key areas of investment: create, grow, make, and sell. And each of these are unique and focus on different aspects of the plant protein value chain. Create projects relate to variety development. Grow projects focus on producer to consumer or traceability. Make projects relate to grain processing, and sell projects typically relate to novel food and feed ingredients. There's a tremendous number of examples of projects in our program guide. To date, PIC has had 2 calls for project. Our current status of our pipeline is 5 announced projects out of 11 approved investments that represent a current active pipeline of 20 projects. That was winnowed from 59 expressions of interest received from those 2 calls. The total project value includes both PIC investment and industry participant investment. As a supercluster, our goal is to encourage collaboration. This collaboration metric graphic is a good example of how our average projects represent in the pipeline. So we require a minimum of 2 companies involved in the consortium, and those are the organizations that sign the funding agreement. This is important, but in addition to that, there's also a lot of opportunities for projects to engage other participants. So this can include both public and private collaborators, building significant collaboration within the sector. So as you can see, we require a minimum of 2 consortium members, but our average project consortiums represent at least 3. To give you more details about the specific projects that we have announced investments in, we'll just give you some highlights of these 5 projects. So the Botanical Corteva and Roland Farms project represents the make pillar. It's related to the development of novel oilseed-derived ingredients from canola, hemp, and sunflower, as well as addressing the separation, purification, and commercialization of ingredients from those varieties. The Merit-winning combination in Batura Seeds project represents also the make pillar, and it relates to the creation of a functional plant protein plant for pea and canola proteins. The Corteva, Bungie, and Botanical project is also a make project. Should move the videos. Or sorry, is a create project. And that's the creation of hybrid canola seed that increase the protein content and less fiber in canola. The final two projects that we'll discuss include the Provision Analytics, Verge Ag, Skymatic, and Coots Agro project in the Grow pillar, which is around a traceability platform along the value chain. The Lucent AGT Foods project was part of the Make pillar and relates to the development of a fibrous co-product for the post-processing industry. Okay, enough background stuff. Let's talk about the reason we're here, which is the third call for expressions of interest. On April 20th, PIC announced the open call for expressions of interest. There's no fixed deadline for these applications, and applicants are invited to submit their proposals when they are ready. To aid applicants, PIC has posted both the program guide and the expression of interest form on the public side of our website. To submit, you do need to have a membership in PIC, as this submission occurs through the member portal. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Lisa to walk through the eligibility and the EOI process.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Diane. I will walk through a little bit on our eligibility and our EOI process. And if you're going to submit an EOI, before you get started, I'd just encourage you to give a really good read to the program guide that Diane shared the link for in the previous slide. It really helps give you the background on that eligibility, costing, things like that. That'll really help you get started. So the project process is in two parts, the expression of interest and then the project proposal. So the expression of interest is, of course, where we're at now, and we're going to have a rolling deadline for that in light of the length of the timeline we have in the framework, in light of the COVID activity going on now. We thought this would be an easier way to not pressure people to a certain deadline for everybody to submit to us when they get ready. Once you submit to us, we're going to be reviewing those expression of interest in groups in set times along the calendar year. Once you submit, we can let you know when the next review date is. And once we review that, we'd be back to you approximately within 4 weeks. The next stage, if the expression of interest is accepted, is the project proposal. Now, the project proposal is a lot more detailed. It requires a lot more due diligence. It's due when you're ready to submit and not on a firm due date after your EOI. And it varies between companies and between projects, but generally takes a few months to get through that project proposal stage. To be eligible for a project, all of our projects need to be company-led. So they need to have at least 2 Canadian companies with significant Canadian operations. Multinationals can be involved, but at least one of the 2 companies has to be an SME. Each consortium member must contribute to the project in a meaningful way. So at least 2 different companies need to contribute financially, but other consortium members can contribute in a way that is meaningful. We let you define that. That can be IP, it can be regulatory expertise, it can be facilities that are made available, a whole bunch of different ways that we would then ask just you to define. Of course, it must align with our objectives of PIC and also the Supercluster Initiative, and it must be incremental to your regular business of your organization. So this just means that it wouldn't be undertaken without your consortium partners' involvement, that it wouldn't be undertaken or at the same size or scope as it would be without the PIC funding. Your project can and is encouraged to conclude academic or other research institutions, such as government research institutions, food development centers. Your consortium partners can include foreign entities prior to a pre-approval. We've seen that in projects to date. And all projects need to pay a 4% administration fee to PIC for management of the project. Once we've reviewed the EOIs, there's 3 possible outcomes. It can be approved and invited to submit a full project proposal. It can be conditionally invited, which means that yes, it is invited, but there's a few changes that need to be made, or it needs to be realigned a little bit. Or it can be declined because the project is not aligned with PIC funding or ISI objectives, or for any other reason it does not meet the eligibility criteria. And in this case, we would definitely talk through that rationale with you. The EOI form is quite straightforward. It's not meant to be a 40-page document. We encourage it to be 10 pages or under. It's got 6 major areas that you go through, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. Project partners, all we're asking here is you show who the lead is going to be, as well as your other project members. Make sure we have contact information, and give a brief few sentences on what the role is going to be the project and the capabilities of that company or member. And we would also encourage you, if you are listing somebody as a project partner here, that you have talked to them about it and cleared that with them, that they will be a part of your application. So there's 6 parts to go through within the EOI form, which is available with just a click on our website. So part 1, identify the gap, problem, challenge, or opportunity to be addressed by the proposed project. We ask here that you include some quantitative information, statistics, or any other data. And what we're asking here, if you can, depending where you are in your project, that quantitative information we'd like to see could be specific to your company, their product line, the value, and rather than just industry available plant protein statistics, something that's specific to the project and your company is really helpful for us. Part 2 is to provide a description of the major activities of the project and how they'll address that problem that you've just described. All projects, of course, must be completed by March 31st, 2023, because that's when the framework ends. So this right here is basically your high-level work plan or workflow. So we need it at a high level, but in its sufficient technical detail that it can be looked at for a review. And we are happy to look at that workflow, work plan as you go along to see if you have enough detail. Part 3 is the budget. So we don't expect a really detailed budget at this stage. We don't need it broken down by your activity, and we don't need a budgetary justification at this point. What we do need to see is what the project will cost, your expected contribution from each of your partners, as well as the requested investment from us on an annual basis. It's also helpful for us if you can break it down into larger categories. If you can break it down into things like subcontract, materials and supply, see it's a little bit more to talk through some of the eligible and eligible costs with you. So if you describe the value chain and the ecosystem. So what we're looking at here is some measurable outcomes, markers of success for your company and for your project partners. We also like to see how these will align to the value chain and ecosystem benefits, and also to PIC's 4 pillars and the 5 themes of the supercluster. And I'll note here that not all projects need to apply to all of the 4 pillars: create, make, grow, and sell, and most of them don't. So you don't have to try to make a link to your project to all of these pillars to make it fit. Part 5 is to identify the potential risks and barriers. We understand that none of the projects that come in are without risk, and we don't assess projects based on the fact that they don't have any risks, because we know that they do. We just want to see that you've identified those risks and that you have a mitigation strategy in place for them. And part 6, you're welcome to provide to us any other relevant information that you don't think you've covered in the first 5, or add in any attachments that you think would be useful for us to see. All right, I am going to hand it over to Megan. We always get a lot of questions on IP rationale, so Megan's gonna walk through that.
Hi, everyone. So I mentioned at the top that my title within PIC is that I am the Intellectual Property Manager. And so I certainly work on the development of projects with Lisa and Diane as well, but have sort of a special focus on IP. So I will talk through just a few aspects of intellectual property today. IP is a cornerstone of the Superclusters program. The program seeks to have diffusion of new technologies throughout our membership group. And so we're going to use just this last little bit of time to provide an overview of the processes that we use to help project teams manage their IP. Within the expression of interest template, there isn't really a lot of reference to intellectual property, and Lisa talked through the different sections we're looking for. But if you do have relevant IP considerations at the point of your expression of interest, we would like to see them captured in section 5 of the template. I think an important piece to share today is that it's important to note that Protein Industries Canada does not take a stake in the intellectual property generated by the funded projects, but we do require the consortia or your project team to collaborate on the development of a plan for any IP generated in the project. This plan is known as your intellectual property rationale, and my role is to work with you to help you develop an understanding of how the background IP that each company is providing to the project will be incorporated into the project plan, and then to identify foreground IP that you anticipate generating within the project. So things that we'll consider include how your IP would be protected, how it would be made available to participants within or outside of the project, and ultimately sort of what the commercialization plan is for that technology. So I just want to be clear that we don't look for a full IP rationale as to be part of your expression of interest, but it is a key consideration if you move forward to full proposals. We like to be upfront on that with folks at the beginning. And an additional aspect of IP management that I just wanted to touch on today is our intellectual property registry. So we're in the process of developing an online database that will be accessible via our member portal on the website. And it's a database that will include the registered intellectual property that's generated by our members through the projects we're working on. This database will provide high-level information about patents, trademarks, and other forms of IP that are generated within funded projects. And it'll provide companies who aren't engaged in a particular project the opportunity to start a licensing conversation with the companies who generated or own the IP. So it really is about a collaboration tool that builds on project investments that we're making. And this registry is something that will be available to all of our members through the member portal. So I think that's really as much about IP as I wanted to share today, but just know that if you do have any questions about any aspect of intellectual property within the Protein Industry Canada, within our programs, please do reach out to me either directly, or if you're already working with Lisa or Diane or one of my other colleagues, they can absolutely make a connection as well, and we can have a discussion about your IP.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. We would like to just go through a bit of a Q&A session now. What we'll do is there are a few questions in the Q&A. I will kind of read them out and hopefully direct them towards one of the 3 panelists today, so we can open it for discussion. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A section. To start off, the first recurring theme in the Q&A is there a publicly available list of PIC members? So this is available behind the member wall. There's a member directory. And the other portion of that question is people are interested in knowing how to engage with those partners, as well as what kind of projects they would like to be engaged in. Would Diane or Megan or Lisa, would either of you be able to answer how people are able to engage with other companies from our membership?
Sure, I'll start, and Lisa or Diane can jump in as well. What we've found, I think, through the previous two expressions of interest is if you're a company so interested in submitting an EOI and you require partners, I think the best thing you can do is certainly take a look at the member listing on the website. And if you flag companies you're interested in an introduction to, we can facilitate that. Or just give us a call and talk through sort of who you're looking for and the type of support that you think your project would require, or the collaborator who would be ideal. And we're very open to working with you to sort of help make introductions and make some of those early connections so that you can start sort of with a warm conversation with a company who you're approaching for collaboration.
Yeah, I think
I'll echo Megan's comments 100%. That's exactly what we've done in the first and second call, and found that those conversations are very easy to broker, and that most of our members are really open to making those connections.
Yeah, I think that kind of wraps up that question, Carson.
Perfect. Great. So the next question that had come in on the chat is, will PIC consider insect protein as a food or feed ingredient, or is it only interested in plant protein?
I'll tackle this one, Carson. So PIC's priorities really relate to commodity crops in Western Canada. So that means that we focus on oil seeds, pulses, and cereals that are generated through commodity commercial agriculture in Western Canada. So that means that we aren't as interested in alternative protein sources or plants that are propagated through intensive agriculture practices such as vertical farming or greenhouses. Would anyone like to add to that?
Oh. No, I think you stated it really well.
Perfect. So the next one just came in. Can you please expand on the expected contribution by consortia principles, as in direct funding, inserting value IP versus in-kind, stacking, etc. Perhaps this is a Megan question?
Sure. So I think what the question is going to is really what's a contribution into a project. So our funding model is typically we're a reimbursement model program. So companies would incur cash costs for their project, and then we would reimburse up to a defined percentage of the value. And that's typically been around the 50% mark. So what we're looking for companies to bring in is there will be a financial contribution to projects. And then there are some opportunities to capture value from other types of contribution, but really it's about covering the expenses that are incurred as part of the project. And to the extent possible, we try to look at those expenses as cash costs so that they become reimbursable rather than an in-kind contribution. There are some fairly specific details around that. So if you do have particular questions about what a contribution would look like within the program, I would suggest reaching out to one of us directly, and we can have sort of your specific conversation about your situation. Lisa, any follow-up on that?
No, I think you've covered it off. Like Megan said, there's a lot of different ways to look at things. So if you're wondering what the contribution for your consortium might look like, by all means, give us a shout. We can walk that through with you.
Perfect. So there's still a question regarding the membership list. So I just want to make sure that I am clear and make sure that I provide everybody with the right answer. So our membership list is located on the member portals, meaning you have to be a member to be able to access our membership list. When you become a member with PIC, you get given a login to the member portal on the back side of our website, and you would be able to find this membership list on the left-hand side under member directory. There's a button there that says member directories, and it is a name, contact information, and a brief description of all companies that are listed on our members. So I just wanted to go over that one more time just to make sure that we're all on the same page. The next question here is regarding PIC members and being spread over different provinces. They say, if someone wants to submit an EOI from other provinces, what are collaboration options? So I believe they're trying to ask, is it okay to have partners from different provinces, and how do you make those collaboration connections from a large geographical area?
I can have a run at this, or do you want to, Diane?
Go ahead, Lisa.
Well, our focus is on Western Canada. Absolutely, Canada-wide applications are eligible. Companies from other provinces are eligible. Again, it's easier for us to talk specifically about your project, so I would encourage you to give us a call, and we can look at that just a little bit more closely.
Thanks, Lisa. The next one that just came in, if there's a technology like traceability in the supply chain that is already approved and funded by PIC, does that mean a similar project would not be approved for funding? How does PIC manage similar technology applications for funding model? Lisa or Diane, do you guys have much experience with working with companies that have had similar project applications?
Some thoughts, Diane, do you want to pipe in?
Sure, I'll pipe in. So we do, obviously, because we are talking about plant protein, it can be sometimes, there's lots of different companies working on pea protein, but not necessarily working on the same aspects of pea protein. So we certainly do see a lot of parallel applications in the sense that they're focusing on the same kind of sector or opportunity, including traceability in the grow pillar. And so what we typically do is that we assign a different team member to lead those projects so that those projects aren't overlapped. But at the end of the day, the projects are held to confidentiality within our organization. So there's no overlap in terms of the projects. Where there are opportunities perhaps for those projects to converge, we would certainly explore that with the individual organizations if that was what made sense. But we certainly do have projects in our pipeline that would be considered competitors to each other. And that's because not all solutions are going to suit everyone. We very much see at PIC that we need to work towards elevating the plant protein sector across a wide variety of opportunities. Our goal is to encourage cluster development. So that means collaboration amongst different companies, and that might be for similar projects because we want to see that acceleration of the sector. Did you want to add anything to that, Lisa?
No, I think you covered it very well.
Perfect. Thanks, Diane. The next question from Chris here. Do you have any quota on balancing the total PIC investment across the 4 pillars, create, grow, make, and sell?
Megan, why don't you tackle this one?
I don't know that we would frame it as a quota. We have targets that were set initially for the 4 pillars. So for the portion of our funds that will be targeted at technology investments, the split was to have 20% of those funds allocated to each of the 4 pillars, with the exception of the make pillar, which is the more value-added processing pillar, and that in the investment to that pillar specifically was targeted at 40%.
Thanks, Megan. I think that information is also available in a bit more detail in our program guide, or it used to be. Is that still the case, Megan?
Diane's more familiar with the latest draft.
I think it is in there, Carson.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. So the next question that I had written down was, when developing an expression of interest, is there any way to reach out and get some help, or is there any extra guidance that someone can get when working through it? Or is there a way to connect with one of you 3 and be able to, walk through it and make sure that they are answering questions appropriately and not missing information? Do you guys take time with project applicants to give advice?
Yes. I should have mentioned that in my question. 100%. Yeah. This is an iterative process. We'll talk to you as you're starting to write. We'll review drafts as you're writing. We'll let you know where you need to add in more information. In the current climate, we're probably not going to be able to sit down with you, but we can set up meetings where we share your document back and forth and work through each of the sections. Absolutely. When you submit it to us, it's not a final submission until you're ready to call it a final submission.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If you're emailing it back and forth with Megan, Lisa, or myself, that's not an official submission. It's once you submit it through our member portal, through the submission uploader, that's when we would consider the submission final. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. The next question here was back again regarding the member listing and asking why it's not available publicly and why it is only available upon membership payment. We consider this a membership benefit. You have to be a member to submit a project, and so that's why we consider the list a membership benefit. However, if you are working on submitting a potential project, or if you are a potential project proponent, we definitely do a lot of work in helping with finding potential partners. So if you aren't too sure if you want to become a member, and if you aren't too sure that you are ready to submit a EOI and go through the project process, then we are able to help make those connections and grow collaboration within your projects. So the next question here says, suppose I have 2 industrial partners interested to participate, and there are PIC and non-PIC members as collaborators. How does the cash contribution work? It says for PIC/non-PIC member to contribute in cash particularly. Diane, are you able to tackle this question for us?
Sure. So if you have industrial partners interested in participating and they do want to receive PIC investment or reimbursement, really, because our funding is a reimbursement model of funding. If they want to receive reimbursement, then they would need to become a PIC member. And so I guess I'll answer this next question kind of as part of my answer to this question, is that the membership fee for becoming a member of PIC is fairly nominal. It's $500 a year. And that gives you access to the entire portal, which has some of the resources that we're developing and enhancing this summer so that we can support companies in being more successful in collaborating with each other and accessing information that's relevant to their interests. So if they are not members at the time of the expression of interest, if we are going to be moving forward to a investment in the project, then we would request that all investees become members. If they're going to operate as a subcontractor to the project, it's less critical for them to become a PIC member. But of course, as our organizational outcome is to encourage collaboration, it's really important for all of the organizations that are working in the ecosystem to self-identify so that we can encourage collaboration amongst them. Does anyone want to add more to my comments?
I think just building on your answer about how to purchase a membership. So it's purchasing your membership is done through our website. And membership is it's very open to multinational companies, small and medium-sized enterprises, individuals who have an interest in participating in a project, and then academic or not-for-profit institutes as well. So I don't know if there are really any cases where there would be a type of company that wouldn't be able to fit within our membership. It is quite open and a broad range of different types of companies within our membership.
Yeah. And we do have international companies that are members of PIC as well. So it's not just Canadian companies, because the agri-food ecosystem is part of the global economy.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. And I think that covered off the next question about being a criteria to be a PIC member, if it's for industry only or academic institutions, or can an individual become a member. We definitely encourage all individuals to be able to become members. We do see academic institutions, we see individual researchers, we see Like you guys had just stated, a lot of different international memberships. So there is no criteria to become a PIC member. So by all means, we accept all kinds of different memberships, as we would like to grow the collaboration between different individuals in our ecosystem. So the next question here is, can you expand on the requirement for a PIC project to be eligible? Lisa, is it a requirement that the project would not proceed without PIC investment / involvement?
In terms of the incrementality piece, I think is what is being asked here.
Mm-hmm.
Would not proceed without the PIC investment, or would not proceed at the same size or scope without the PIC investment. So,
Or speed.
Or speed. So what that means to your project, we can certainly talk about specifically.
Yeah. I think quite often a lot of the questions that we see are really unique to individual projects, which is why we really encourage organizations that are considering submitting expressions of interest to have a conversation with Megan, Lisa, or I, or just send an email, and we can speak to your specific scenario so that it's a much more custom response in terms of what you're looking for and what your needs are. We would like an expression of interest to be as complete as possible, but if you don't recognize a value chain partner that you would like to have participating, and you flag that as an opportunity within your EOI to build on that within your proposal, that's certainly an option to consider. So you don't have to have all of the project neatly tied in a bow, but we would like if you recognize that that's an opportunity, that we can work with you to help close that gap.
Thanks, Diane. There are no more questions in the Q&A, so I guess we can just open it for kind of final call here for questions. Do you guys have any last comments before any of the last questions trickle in?
I think I'd just like to say, so we do get asked quite a bit on what we like to fund in terms of what is an eligible expense. And in the program guide, there's quite a bit of information in there about what we consider an eligible or an ineligible expense for matching, or for reimbursement, I should say. And so capital is one of those ones that we see as a question, or foreign costs we see as a question quite often. So we don't necessarily say no to any foreign costs. What we do require is some due diligence demonstrating that foreign costs can't be completed in Canada to proceed. So there's some requirements for approvals and due diligence before those expenses can be approved as eligible once the project investment goes forward. And then with respect to capital, and that relates to incrementality, to be honest, is that if capital is being purchased, and capital meaning mostly equipment, because we don't see investments on buildings per se. So for capital equipment purchases, the part that we can cover would be the incremental part of that cost that's related specifically to the R&D. So our investments priority is to invest in research and development projects.
Thanks for sharing that, Diane. That's great insight. I think you spurred a couple questions here. And Lisa, I know that the expression of interest stage of the budget is fairly high level and then not very much detail, but maybe if you could expand even into the full proposal stage on if we're looking for a budget breakdown by different partners, different years, and by major categories, or what the financial workbook sort of looks like.
The financial workbook in the full proposal?
Yeah, I think the question here might move into a little bit further of the full proposal stage, where we actually get into a deeper financial breakdown of a budget for a project, because I believe the expression of interest is fairly short and high level. Is that correct?
It is. It is quite high level at the EOI stage. As Diane said, there's a big section on eligible versus ineligible costs in the program guide. We can walk through that with you once we see your high level budget. Once you move to the full application, a full detailed workbook is required. So the details for all the years of your project, as well as the types of expenses, if there's equipment and capital, the associated calculations related to working life of the piece of equipment versus how many hours is being spent on R&D. All of those things are taken into account within the financial workbook, and then should the project be approved, that financial workbook becomes part of the binding agreement. So it is quite detailed at the project application stage.
Thank you. And yeah, like you said, the EOI stage is quite high level, so that there's not nearly as much detail there. But the next question here says, can a project be product focus? Example, acquiring a new state-of-the-art technology to improve processes or increase capacity, perhaps creating new and innovative products. Diane, are you able to answer this for us?
I think maybe Megan could tackle this one better than I could, because it's, oh, sorry, you did remove the question already.
I think so. My read on the question is that it's asking if accessing new technology as part of your project would be an eligible expense. That's likely to be a yes, depending on the circumstance. We would need to sort of dig into what exactly the details are. But for instance, if there are licensing costs to bring a technology into a project, in many cases, those are eligible costs. I think sort of the difference may come in is if you would be looking at a large capital investment in terms of the new technology you're bringing in, that might be something that we would be able to, that would be an ineligible cost or not be captured by the project. But it sounds like you might have something pretty specific in mind there. So an offline conversation about sort of the type of technology you're looking to access and how that would play into your overall project plan might be valuable for us to dig into.
Great. Sounds like a follow-up question here. Does technology need to be new or adapting existing technology that might not exist in Western Canada? Would this also qualify?
Megan?
Yeah, so I don't think that we don't have a hard line saying that the technology that you're working with in your project needs to be new and novel and not something that we're already doing in Western Canada. It's we're looking to sort of high grade the type of work that we're doing, and there are lots of different ways to do that. So in some cases, it might be about bringing in a new novel technology that isn't really in our market yet, but in other cases, it can also be adaptation or improvement of something that's existing.
Great. So could a project be based on setting up capacity to service industry with, analytic services for protein consumption?
Lisa?
Analytical services for protein consumption or measurement?
Composition.
Composition? Okay. Possibly. It would depend on specifically on the project, what kind of expenses you're looking at when you terms of setting up capacity. You're talking about building a lab or, putting up a building. Possibly, yes or no. I think that's one of those things that would benefit from an offline conversation. A lot of these sound like pretty specific examples that we'd probably need to hear a little bit more before we could give you a definitive yes or no.
Yeah, that's fair. You're right. There is quite a bit of detail required to answer some of these questions. So with that said, we can definitely arrange a lot of times with any of the people on the phone to meet with Lisa, Dan, or Megan. If you want to reach out at the end of this meeting, we will give you guys some tools and some information to help answer those questions. A question here is, what are the success rate of EOI or projects? Is this, I would assume, is in our project pipeline. So what is the success rate of them making past EOI to full proposal to a project? Is that what you guys understand?
Yeah, I think, Carson, this is really about the pipeline and how we have go through the process of selecting what moves forward in the pipeline. So based on the 2 project calls we've had so far, we had 59 expressions of interest submitted, and of those 20 kind of advanced into the develop a full proposal stage. Actually, I should correct myself, 24 actually moved forward into develop a full proposal stage. 4 of those self-selected out. So we currently still have 20 projects in our active pipeline. And so I think in that sense, from EOI to full proposal, if you look at the 20%, you're looking at about a 30% success rate through the pipeline. I think if you do follow, though, the eligibility criteria and you fit the pillars, there's a very good chance that you will be moving forward in the project pipeline process. So I think really the important question is making sure that the project aligns and that the eligibility criteria are met to move through the EOI process.
Awesome. Thank you. I think you got the answer there for them. So if not, they'll let us know again, but I appreciate the question. Next question here is, are in-kind costs eligible?
I'll let Megan or Lisa tackle this one.
I'll start and then Lisa can repair my answer. So in-kind is sort of a funny category in this program, in that the things that you might be used to including as an in-kind cost in a project application through other programs, we actually try to make into a cash cost in this program so that they are eligible expenses. In-kind, though, in some cases it does make sense to have an in-kind contribution, particularly if it's a material that you're putting into maybe a processing project. But sort of the catch on that is that we can't directly reimburse for the costs of in-kind contributions. So they can be an eligible project cost and contribute to your sort of overall contribution to the project. However, we won't reimburse you for a portion of the cost of that in-kind. So again, and I know we keep defaulting to this, but it's sometimes really worth sort of a half-hour conversation with one of us to talk through what your thoughts are around what an in-kind cost would be, and we can work with you to see if it maybe fits better into one of our other categories. However, I will say that at the expression of interest stage of the game, that's really, I think, more of a detailed budget question than we're looking to look into at this point, where at this stage, we just, really need to see sort of what the overall cost picture for the project looks like, rather than digging into whether an in-kind would be ineligible, or where it would fall within the budget workbook.
Great. Lisa, any comments?
No, exactly as Megan said, overwhelmingly what people generally consider to be in kind when they first apply to us actually are moved across to cash contributions in this program. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks for the clarification, guys. So there appears to be no more questions, and we are approaching the hour mark here very quickly. I would just like to leave off by saying thank you to you 3 for providing the time and this great insight into the EOI process today. And thank you to all the participants for coming and listening and asking questions. I think we covered a lot of different topics and a lot of frequently asked questions. So I hope there was a lot of insight for you guys today. If there's any last questions or comments from you guys, please jump in.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, and I trying to speak for Megan and Lisa, is that we really hope that if you have specific questions on your project, that you reach out to us and have a conversation, because that's probably the most effective way to move forward. We typically see questions about what's the size of the project that we like to fund, and we don't say that there is a minimum or a maximum. If you look at the projects that we've invested in, there's some that are $1 million, so that our PIC investment is $500,000, up to projects that are $40 million, so PIC's investment is $20 million. What we really recommend that you think about is what projects can make significant impact on the plant protein sector. So we want you to be bold, we need you to be big, and we need you to think about how you're going to create innovation in the sector. So you need to size the project accordingly to what kind of activities you need to do. And there's a mixture of projects that will do that. So smaller size project to larger size projects. We are using Zoom for webinar as our platform for the section. And we will be making the recording available. We're just not sure exactly how that will work after we process it, because we said that this is our first time, so bear with us. But once it's available, it will be put on the PIC website or through some other sharing medium, depending on what works the best for the size of the file. So we really hope that you found this productive, and you will be receiving a follow-up questionnaire on your experience today to help us understand what we could do better in future webinars. And within that question and answer, there'll be an opportunity to express interest in having a conversation with us to schedule some follow-up one-on-ones after the fact. So thank you very much for taking time today, and we hope that you have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.